control. Everybody to the Wild Wild West, a state that's untouchable like Elliot Ness. The track hits your eardrum like
it's to the discussion. It's definitely something that all of you guys need to be a part of, as not only Chris Sylvester, one of the best in the business, and Dan Gadino, who knows how to get it done. This is your host, Nick Rice, for another presentation of the discussion. And gentlemen, thank you for joining us. California love here in SoCal. We're getting ready for LA broadcast camp, but guys, I have to say it, and I mean, what I'm going to say is about as disturbing as the video. Paul George got absolutely no love by that hardwood floor. He just got destroyed, and boy, definitely a sad day for the NBA.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the USA playing their annual scrimmage before the FIBA World Cup, the World Cup for basketball. It's obviously not as big of a deal as soccer's World Cup. I didn't
even contend in that? Win every year.
Win every year. I mean, it's kind of like Canada for hockey, USA for basketball. But just a gruesome injury for Paul George, which is really tough to see. I mean, it's tough to see from anyone. We saw it a couple of years ago in the Final Four. The NCAA tournament with Kevin Ware of Louisville at the time. Since then, he's transferred to Georgia State. But we saw him come back from it okay. But this is a whole new level. This is a whole new player in Paul George, an up-and-coming superstar, one of the future faces of the NBA, if not already a face in the NBA of the Indiana Pacers. The Pacers, a team that lost Lance Stevenson this offseason to the Charlotte Hornets. Now, who knows if Paul George is ever even going to come back. I mean, I think they're optimistic that he can rehab like Kevin Ware and come back in a year or so, but I doubt we'll see him this NBA regular season. So the Pacers are in trouble, but you really got to feel for Paul George, a really good guy on and off the basketball court, and one heck of a player, up-and-coming superstar. In this league, you hate to see it happen to anybody, but especially a guy like Paul George.
Yeah, we were taking a look statistically, and among the young bigs in the NBA, he was ranked among the best, something like 21 points per game last season. We bring in a Dan Gadino, NBA analyst. And Dan, your thoughts on this injury? And my question is, how exactly people are comparing his injury at all to Kevin Ware? I mean, overall, I think it's two totally separate deals because the pressure for 100% is going to be on Paul George.
You're right, Nick, and thank you for bringing me on. What's up, Chris? Thanks for having me on.
I'm here,
Thanks
man.
For having me. Yeah. As soon as I saw this, I cringed, and I just felt so sad. I'm not going to watch it again. All I needed to do was watch it once, and I totally understand what's going on now. This is going to change a lot in basketball. You're not going to see superstar guys probably compete at the USA team level anymore. You're going to see guys like Durant maybe just not take part in that. You're going to see team officials like the presidents and the agents advise the players, hey, maybe you should sit that out. It's surprising to see Derrick Rose after his injury, after taking a year off, he decides to be on Team USA. And so I wonder if there's a little bit of doubt now, a little bit of doubt from the players themselves, like, hey, maybe I shouldn't be playing in the offseason. Maybe I should just work hard But then again, that's just a freak accident, just like Kevin Ware's. It's just every so often, and poor Paul George, I just can't help but feel bad for him, man.
Yeah, obviously it's an extremely sad day in the National Basketball Association. Thank you for joining us here on the discussion here alongside Chris Sylvester and Dan Godino. I'm your host, Nick Rice, here tonight. And you can catch us, tweet us, maybe call us onto the show, number 951-515-4552. Thank you all for joining us, though, by the way. And, Dan, I promise we're not going to talk a whole lot about the NBA, but just to real quickly go inside this, Indiana, do they even have a chance to make the postseason this year with this injury and all the other flux in free agency? We mentioned Lance Stevenson is gone, and this team does not look like the one that nearly went to the NBA Finals last year.
Talk about a quick 180. They're going the other way, and they're headed south. They weren't even good enough in the first place. It just so happens that they play in the East, and which was dominated last year by Miami. If they would have played in the West, I think they would have been an eighth, or even they wouldn't even have made the playoffs. I think they would have been an 8th to 6th seed in the West instead of the number 2 seed in the East. So they're not even that good to begin with, and just that loss of Paul George, man, it's just instant decline now. I don't know who they replace him with. They've got to go to. I just don't know. They've got to go through free agency or for next year and probably start rebuilding without him.
Yeah, I mean, I got to agree with you, Dan, on that. That's the tough thing, though. I mean, we're late in the free agency period. We're over a month into free agency in the NBA, and unfortunately for the Pacers, all the good chips have fallen. Mm-hmm. Right? Am I right? LeBron.
Chris, I do want to ask you, what about Kevin Love? There have been talks about him, either Cleveland or Indiana.
Well, what are the Pacers going to give up for Kevin Love? I mean, other than draft picks, I don't see Kevin Love going to the Pacers. Even with Kevin Love, the Pacers are, at best, I think, still a 4 or 5 seed in the East. I think the East is really interesting now with this injury, because I think you take the Pacers out of the equation to return to the NBA Finals. You have the Cavs in the mix all of a sudden because you have the best player on the planet joining Kyrie Irving and Andrew Wiggins and Anthony Bennett and co. And you never know if the Cavs might swing a late summer deal to get Kevin Love to Cleveland, or maybe something during the season to kind of shake up the standings in the Eastern Conference if the Cavs aren't doing so hot. But you look at a team like the Chicago Bulls, if they're able to stay healthy, they add Pau Gasol, former MVP, Derrick Rose comes back. Joakim Noah is arguably the best center in the NBA, definitely defensively. So you have a nice team over there in Chicago. And you got to look at Miami as well. Miami's not a bad team by any means. I mean, really all they lost was LeBron James. I mean, I hate to – I mean, it sounds – a lot easier said than done. I mean, only LeBron James. Okay, maybe they lost their whole team, did Miami, but, I mean, you do bring back Dwayne Wade. You do bring back Chris Bosh. You add some veterans, Luol Deng, Danny Granger. I think Miami's a team that can find themselves back in the NBA Finals if they can, get past the Cleveland Cavaliers and Chicago Bulls, which wouldn't be impossible by any stretch. So I think this Indiana, because honestly, I was telling people before Lance Stevenson left that I think, with LeBron going to Cleveland, if Lance comes back, I think Indiana is a real threat finally to get over the hump in that Eastern Conference Finals and get to the NBA Finals. But with Stevenson leaving and now this horrific injury to Paul George, I don't see the Pacers in any type of contention this year to really do anything. And you feel for their president, Larry Bird, and their coach, Vogel, who've done so much in the last 4 or 5 years to try to build up this franchise from the bottom. And, they've brought in veteran players. They've had good draft picks pan out. And Paul George, one of the best young players in the game, you hate to see what happened to him tonight, but it happened, and now the Pacers really aren't going to be a factor in the East. So I think you look at a team like Cleveland, Miami, Chicago, Brooklyn still has a lot of veteran guys, still got Joe Johnson and Darren Williams, Brook Lopez coming off of an injury, KG, whatever he has left, and then the Wizards as well. Wizards added Paul Pierce, John Wall, Beal, Nene Hilaro. I mean, the Wizards are a deep team as well. So, and the Raptors too. Nick mentioned to me before the show started, a lot of young talent up across the border in Toronto as well. So the East is going to be very, very interesting this year. And the NBA, a lot of people say the NBA regular season isn't all that fun to watch the last couple of seasons because you knew it was going to be Miami and either OKC or San Antonio. Right. Now I think, a whole new interest in the NBA is going to come upon this next season because I think partly because of LeBron switching teams, but I think now there's a big old race in the West like there usually is, and on top of that, you're going to have one heck of a race in the Eastern Conference as well. So I'm really looking forward to what the NBA season has to offer this year. But once again, getting back to the topic of discussion here, Paul George, prayers go out to that guy and his family because that was one of the most horrific, if not the most horrific sports injury I've ever seen in my time.
Yeah, we were talking about the tides turning. You expected take a few years for that to happen. Well, how about Miami in literally one season, along with Indiana? You could see just how fast things can switch in the NBA. We're just getting started. Our feet are just under us. We're going to take a quick little commercial break. For a station identification, you are listening to the National Sports on Spreaker.com.
Hi, this is Sam Rosen, and I'm here with Sam's Situation.
Good afternoon, and welcome into the corner. It's Chris's Corner here on Spreaker.com, a national sports affiliate.
Hello, and welcome to the Cameron Sadeghi Show.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of the Deep Sports Talk League. This is affiliated with National Sports.
Cameron Sadeghi, Chris Sylvester, Sam Rosen, Andrew Goldstein, Daniel Levy, and the entire broadcast crew with Commissioner Robert Dieters. You are live from National Sports Radio Station in Los Angeles, California. Welcome back to the National Sports, guys. We're just getting started here. And also another thing I wanted to mention real quick, Toronto, doesn't it remind you a lot, Chris, of Golden State right now? Great team, but young. It's just basically they may be a couple years away.
I don't know about a couple. I don't know if they're ever going to win a championship in the next 5 years or so. I think every good championship team needs one or more, a great player and then a couple good players. I don't know if there's any great players on Toronto, but they got some young guys like obviously DeMar DeRozan's been carrying the load up there for the Raptors the last couple of seasons. And I mean, it always helps when you have Drake a sideline at your games, right?
Yeah,
so
it helps you win a few. Yeah.
Right? It seems like Drake's always at the big time sporting events. Right. So I think if the rapper Drake, if he keeps going to those Raptors games, I think they're gonna have some fun up there in Toronto and find themselves in a playoff spot every now and then.
More than every now and then in that conference. Have you seen exactly what they're putting out there? But, guys, bigger and better things. Trade deadline right at this moment. Some of the latest around the MLB. We'll start with Dan Gadino. What was your takeaway from exactly what went on over the last 24 hours?
I was super surprised. The biggest one, I think, Chris might disagree. I wouldn't even say David Price to the Tigers was a surprise. I would say John Lester to the Oakland A's for Cespedes. Now that was a shocker. That came out of nowhere. I don't know who gets the better end because Cespedes was he's this high energy, very, very powerful bat type of a guy. They let that go. And so in the AL, I think you have to rely on scoring runs, and they decide to take that away and go with pitching. But this guy's lights out. His numbers in the playoffs are the best among the best. And so that was my biggest trade at the trade deadline, Lester to Oakland.
Yeah, no, I got to agree with you on that, Dan. Surprisingly, you probably thought I'd go in the direction of David Price to Detroit. I do agree with you on that. And I do think that the Red Sox are going to end up winning that trade because even with the beautiful rotation that Oakland has, I think losing Cespedes really, really hurts that offense. I mean, take tonight as a small sample size, but final score of that Oakland A's game tonight, Kansas City 1, Oakland nothing. So post-Yoenis era, the Oakland A's are yet to score a run. I mean, that's a very small sample size. There's other guys, Moss, Donaldson, Lowry, Coco Crisp. I mean, they got guys in their lineup that to get the job done offensively, but I think energy-wise, I agree with you, Dan. The back-to-back home run derby champion, Yoenis Cespedes, is gone all of a sudden. I think, I woke up to that news yesterday, and I was absolutely shocked. I wasn't so shocked at the A's landing John Lester. I thought maybe Lester was headed for St. Louis or Pittsburgh or something like that. But I was a little bit shocked that Lester ended up with the A's, especially because the A's pulled that big deal on July 4th for Samardzija and Hamill. I thought they were going to be done after that, but Jason Hamill has been awful since getting traded to the Oakland A's. So I think Billy Beane, Mr. Moneyball, felt like he needed to go out there and get another starter. And I think he's sick and tired of going to the playoffs and losing every year and not coming away with anything. And so I think
I want to add to that, and I think it's part of Billy Beane's. For those who don't know, Billy Beane is the GM. Movie was made about him, Moneyball, and how he uses sabermetrics, statistics. He uses statistics to determine who he wants on his team. He's doing that, and now he's actually using money because Lester's not cheap. So this is all part of his progression. It's proven. The sabermetrics does work, but without the big names, you're not going to win the World Series. So what he's doing now is he's using the statistics, and he's actually using some money now, which is good. I
agree with you on that. I agree. He kind of has the same philosophy, but at the same time, he's more willing to spend money. I agree with you on that. But when it's all said and done, don't you think that Ben Cherington of the Boston Red Sox kind of pulled a little bit of a fast one on Beane here? Lester's a free agent after this season, and let's just say Oakland doesn't win it all, and I don't think they're going to win it all. Personally, Oakland has a one-game lead in the AL West right now. There's not a guarantee that they're going to even win their own division. They might be sent to a one-game playoff. How terrible would that be after all this? Only get to participate in a one-game playoff. That's a real possibility at this point, Dan. But on top of that, there have been rumblings, and I know we love to start a controversy here on the discussion, but there have been rumblings, and even, I don't know if you caught it today, Dan, you probably didn't, because it was a recent interview, but David Ortiz was interviewed today, and he said that he didn't say he thinks, he doesn't say he hopes, he said he thinks, he said this exactly, he said he will be teammates once again with John Lester before he retires. So, and I've heard in the last couple of weeks before the Lester trade that there's a real possibility that even if he does get traded out of Boston, he'll sign back there in the offseason. So let's just say, let's play scenarios here. Let's just say Oakland doesn't do much in the postseason this year. Maybe another measly ALDS exit this year for the Oakland A's, and all of a sudden Johnny Gomes is a free agent who also came over in that deal. Cespedes is still under team control with the Red Sox through next season. All of a sudden the Red Sox, they don't really have much in their rotation. They traded out Lackey, Peavy, and Lester in this past week. Let's say, because the Red Sox are a big market team, they got money for days. Let's say the Red Sox go back and get John Lester. Now all of a sudden, is Billy Beane really looking all that smart? Because a lot of people are really admiring that move right now, but a lot of people aren't really looking into the future. And obviously the A's are win now mode. World Series or bust is basically the message that they sent with that trade. They traded away their top prospect in the Samardzija Hamill deal to the Cubs as well. But, if that scenario does happen, Lester going back to Boston in the offseason, how smart does that make Billy Beane look now?
Hey, you're being hard on him. What's going on is Billy Beane actually has a great relationship with Boston. He was actually offered the GM position in Boston a couple years back. I mean, I remember I saw the movie Moneyball, in which the president owner of Boston offers Billy Beane, hey, why don't you take this job over here? We got the money. You could play around with it. And so what happened this season was Billy Beane's just going in for 1 year, this year. And he says, hey, let me borrow Lester. Let me borrow Lester for this year. Go all in and all out. And I'll give you guys Cespedes. And I think Cespedes he's a star because of his name and because of his he's just a great athlete, right?
Yeah.
But is he as polished of a baseball player that you want on your team? You see him a lot of times where it looks like he's playing handball with the baseball against a wall, when somebody hits a double. He's always goofing up, messing up, but it always seems like his arm is good enough to go get an out. But he's not as polished of a baseball player. So that's what Billy Beane saw, and he's like,
I see your point. I mean, he's only hitting. I don't even think he's hitting 250 this year. I mean, he's got the pop, he's got the name, but I know he's flashy. He's a guy that brings energy to the table. I think that's what the A's are going to miss more than anything, more than even his offensive production.
Right, and it's just a 1 year thing. A lot of teams have done that where they just go all in 1 year, and that's fine. It's part of the game, and maybe I feel like maybe you're being just a little too hard on Billy Beane. He's done a lot with practically nothing, man.
Yeah. Okay. All right. No, I understand what you're saying there. So I mean, it'll be interesting to see what Oakland does, but I'm still not convinced that they have the offense to get through the postseason. I just don't see the A's as I see them as a World Series contender, but I don't see them winning the World Series in my eyes. All right, a couple more trades that went down. John Lackey. We'll get to the price one. Don't even worry. Anyone out there wanting to hear a little bit more about the 3-team deal between the Mariners, the Tampa Bay Rays, and the Detroit Tigers, which sent 2012 AL Cy Young Award winner David Price to the Motor City to be in that spectacular rotation over there as well. But how about John Lackey going to St. Louis for a young pitcher in Joe Kelly, who Dodger fans might remember broke Hanley Ramirez's ribs last year in the National League Championship Series. The young man throws pretty hard. And on top of that, Alan Craig, both those guys under team control for 4 more years. John Lackey, a free agent after 2015. A lot of people are saying, the Red Sox, wow. I mean, they get Cespedes, they get Kelly, they get Craig, they get a couple of prospects for Miller to Baltimore. They get Kelly Johnson for Stephen Drew to the Yankees. They get the prospects in the deal which sent Peavy to San Francisco. All of a sudden, it looks like the Red Sox might be a real threat in 2015. Personally, I love the trade that Boston made to get John Lackey out of there and to get a younger, harder throwing right-handed pitcher in Joe Kelly in there, and Alan Craig, who was a big part of the Cardinals' 2011 World Series run.
Out with the old and in with the new. That says. I mean, Lackey, he had a mediocre year. I think he did get a World Series, and then it's just downhill from there. I do like that move for Boston. Boston gets a guy who's just a competitor. Kelly's not afraid. I mean, he continues to this season. He continued to hit Dodgers. He didn't care. He was going inside on guys, and so I think it's a perfect scene for him because Boston has that type of mentality and feel. It seems like so I like that.
Yeah, no, I love that trade for Boston. I think St. Louis, a team, they got Justin Masterson too, so I think they shored up their rotation a little bit for this year, but I really like the deal for Boston long term. And let's not forget, Boston visits St. Louis this upcoming week. Now the St. Louis Cardinals elected to pitch John Lackey Sunday against the Milwaukee Brewers to avoid him facing the Red Sox early next week. But I believe Joe Kelly will make his first start in a Red Sox uniform in St. Louis against his former team. Crazy stuff there. Gotta love the trade deadline. Gotta love Major League Baseball, especially now in August. It's the dog days of August, the stretch run of September coming up. Real quick here, before we end this trade line discussion and kind of get into the standings, David Price We weren't sure if he was going to get dealt until about a couple of hours before the trade deadline yesterday. We heard the Dodgers were interested, the Cardinals, the Mariners, the Pirates. The Mariners were involved in the deal, but they did not get David Price. David Price winds up going to Detroit. Detroit sends Austin Jackson to Seattle. Seattle sends prospect Nick Franklin to Tampa Bay. Detroit also sends left-handed pitcher starter Drew Smyly, a young left-hander that'll figure to be a factor in that Tampa Bay rotation as well. And on top of that, the Tigers give up a pretty good single-A shortstop prospect who's just 18 years of age. So you know, Tampa usually gets a lot for in trades. Recently, they sent James Shields and Wade Davis to the Kansas City Royals. They got back top prospect Will Myers and a couple of other good young players. But I feel like Tampa Bay could have gotten a lot more for David Price had they hold on to him for the rest of this year and maybe have more time to work out a trade in the offseason.
Well, the thing is, he was on a one-year contract. This was his last year, and so if he would have pulled a Dwight Howard. They would have begged him to stay, but he would have taken off. He doesn't want to play in Tampa. Nobody shows up to those games. This trade was actually pretty cool. During the trade, Detroit was playing the White Sox. Austin Jackson, in the middle of the sixth inning, I think, or the bottom of the fifth, gets pulled from right field. So they wave him down like, "Hey, get off the field." And so he runs off the field. They show it on the big screen. They give him an ovation. All his teammates give him hugs, and he's off. So that was pretty cool. It was probably the coolest trade. Not the biggest surprise for me, but the coolest trade, like the one that just had the most going on within it.
Well, obviously, us on the discussion, we try to not only relate this to this coming month here in August, but also coming up in October. It's playoff time, and we were talking earlier about the Oakland A's being the top record in the MLB, along with a number of other teams in very close contention. The Angels nipping at their heels, but we'll just cut to the chase, ladies and gentlemen. If the playoffs were to start today in the major leagues, the A's would play either the Angels or basically, the Blue Jays? They're playing in a one-game wild card, which I'm sure Chris will go into deep detail a little bit later. But before we get there, before we basically put all the people on the listening here to sleep, the A's taking on the Angels. Overall, it's a team I think is ready for the playoffs in a Los Angeles team that can score with authority. I think they've had something around 5 runs per game over the last few weeks. Taking on an Oakland team that was shut out last week. We'll start with Dan here. Love his thoughts on this one. Your thoughts about the A's against the Angels, what could potentially be a trip to the semifinals.
Nick, more than anybody else, I'm a Southern Cal guy. Born and raised. I'm going with the Angels, man. And it's not bias. It's just, I think
we know
they've got the confidence. I mean, they go about their business very quietly. I hear stories about their clubhouse, their locker room. It's so quiet in there. It's totally professional. They're not in there goofing around. They're not, doing what baseball players do. Mike Scioscia, manager of the Angels, has them playing the way they should. They probably are missing a few parts, but Mike Trout makes up for that. I'm going with the Angels.
That brings a very interesting discussion because that means that Oakland, having the best record right now, will be bumped out of the postseason. And you mentioned very easily they could be a potential wild card participant, which puts them one game out of not even advancing out of that one. Your thoughts about A's against the Angels, potentially fireworks in the air for this one.
Well, I mean, don't get me started on the Angels. I mean, obviously, I've been covering the Angels for quite a long time now, but I think what it comes down to if the A's and Angels meet is that starting pitching. I really like Oakland to have the upper hand as far as starting pitching goes in the postseason, but with Oakland's offense just so Man, after trading away Cespedes, I mean, if the Angels throw out Garrett Richards, Jared Weaver, C.J. Wilson, first 3 games in the postseason series, I think it's nearly equivalent to Oakland throwing out their top 3 guys, Lester, Samardzija, Sonny Gray, the first 3 games, just because the Angels' offense is that much better. And although the rotation definitely is more of a strength for Oakland than it is the Angels, I just think that with Oakland's offense just being a lot weaker now with the loss of Cespedes, I think I give the Angels the upper hand in that. And you got to look at what the Angels bullpen has done. In the month of June, their ERA was under a run and a half. They bring over Houston Street. Who's been one of the game's best closers over the last 5 or 6 years. Joe Smith, Kevin Jepsen, 2 of the top underrated relievers. Jason Grilly they got from the Pirates as well, who was an all-star closer last year. So I think I give the Angels the upper hand just because I like their offense better and I like their bullpen better. I like how they match up with the Oakland A's. And, how much of a bummer would that be going back to Billy Beane if his team perhaps gets knocked out in that wild card game or even the first round once again after all these moves, all this reconstruction of his ball club. I mean, it's World Series or bust, like you said, Dan. And for me, I just don't like the matchups with the A's against the Angels. And, even if the A's met a team like the Tigers or Orioles, I'm not sure if I'd take the A's over those teams as well.
True.
Short and sweet, Dan. True.
What makes this very interesting is, according to ESPN, the A's and the Angels are ranked the number 1 and 2 best teams in the MLB. How fitting for that. But the number 3 team is the Detroit Tigers, who actually, record-wise, would be the worst winning percentage that reaches the postseason. They would take on the Orioles if the playoffs do start today. And, guys, a couple of teams that come from different backgrounds. Who is your takeaway? We'll start with Dan on this one.
Detroit. They're my favorites for the World Series, by the way. They're so intimidating. They've got the best. They've got the best batter in the league. Triple Crown winner Miguel Cabrera. The guy's just a monster. He's just a stud, and they've got that pitching rotation. Scherzer. You hear it all the time. Scherzer, Verlander, Porcello, and now Price. Man. They're lights out. I'm not even going to talk about Baltimore. Or is it Toronto?
It's
See,
Baltimore.
I even forgot.
It doesn't matter, Dan. Does it?
It doesn't matter, right? Yeah. It doesn't.
Well, I have seen Baltimore look relatively good. And, Chris, why a 59-47 record? Detroit, I guess, not exactly getting it done in the win column so far, but the trade deadline certainly helped their cause in a big way.
Well, I think Detroit's just kind of been up and down this year. I think injuries have hurt them a little bit here and there. But I agree. I think Detroit's really underperformed, and I think that's the big reason why they went out and got David Price. Did they exactly need David Price to get into the postseason? No. But, I mean, the last couple of years they've either been in the ALCS or in the World Series and come up empty. And so this year, Dave Dombrowski, the GM over there, he pulls the trigger. He sends away his superstar center fielder, his young guy who has a great future in Austin Jackson, away for a guy it's almost a rental in David Price. I think David Price will be there long term because Max Scherzer is a free agent this offseason. I think Scherzer's out of Detroit after this year. I don't think Detroit has the money to keep both Price and Scherzer and keep both of them happy at the same time. So I think this is another situation in Detroit where it's all or now. You know, I mean, they're all in now, all or nothing now, and so I loved the trade for David Price. I think it was worth Austin Jackson because I think this makes Detroit the team that's the best position to go do big things come postseason time. They're already running away with the Central despite only being 12 games over 500. But like Dan said, and he actually texted me this yesterday, and I saw it later on a tweet from ESPN, and you kind of forget because Justin Verlander's kind of having a down year this year. But the 2012 Cy Young Award winner was Justin Verlander, pitcher for the Detroit Tigers. Excuse me, 2011. He won it. 2012, David Price, now a member of the Detroit Tigers. 2013 winner, Max Scherzer, now in the rotation for the Detroit Tigers. I don't know if anyone on Detroit's going to win the Cy Young this year the way that King Felix is pitching in the American League, but I think that rotation, and like Dan said, Miguel Cabrera, Ian Kinsler, Victor Martinez is having one heck of a year. J.D. Martinez, Torrey Hunter, Rajai Davis, Alex Avila. They got the pieces to get it done on the offensive side of the ball, too. So I think Detroit's really underperformed. I like the way the A's and Angels do match up with them because their bullpen's a little bit weak, but they did get Joaquin Soria from the Texas Rangers. I believe Joe Nathan will be better despite having an ERA above 5 right now, which is very surprising. And then they got Jabba Chamberlain in a setup role who's been pretty good for them this year too. So I think, you take out the bullpen concerns, you got to think Detroit is the favorite in the American League. And like Dan and I said a couple of weeks ago on our first episode of the discussion, my World Series pick for the American League was the Detroit Tigers, and not a thing has changed since then. I still think Detroit is in the best position, especially now with the addition of David Price and Joaquin Soria. I think they're in the best position out of any American League team to get to the World Series. Is it a guarantee? No, it's baseball. That's what makes baseball so great. You never know what's going to happen come playoff time. But I think Detroit is in prime position to get themselves to the World Series.
Chris, you know who the Detroit Tigers remind me of?
Who do they remind you of?
They remind me of the San Antonio Spurs, a veteran ball club that doesn't care about the regular season. Well, they do care about the regular season, but they're just looking to cruise. They're looking to cruise. They don't have all the wins. They don't have the best record, but they're cruising. They just want to get to crunch time, and when it's crunch time, that's when they take over.
Yeah, no, I agree. You like Osmus as their coach? I really love the job he's done there.
Brad Osmus, he used to play catcher. A catcher runs the game.
Exactly.
He understands the game. He's calling the shots and calling all the right shots right now.
Yeah, definitely. I think Detroit over Baltimore in that series, and I'll take Detroit over the A's and the Angels at this point. I know the Angels just took 3 of 4 from the Tigers this past weekend, but I think it's a much different story once you get to the postseason.
Definitely, the trade creates some amazing headlines, but one other thing is maybe not necessarily true with Detroit. They always seem to bring in some great talent, but will the talent progress to wins in the postseason? Always moving athletes in the middle of the season sometimes is a challenge. You don't always get the same production one team to the next, but you do get some out of potentially one of the better players, young and up-and-coming prospects in a Yasiel Puig, who currently leads the top-ranked National League team, the LA Dodgers. Dan may know a thing or two about this ball club. The Giants lead the wild card chase right now. They would be the number 4 seed, but there are 3 other teams, the Cardinals, the Braves, throwing I think the Blue Jays in there.
No, Blue Jays are American League.
American League.
They're in Canada, but they're in the American League for whatever reason.
Very interesting. Obviously, I think we can all agree the Giants are potentially the best. No matter where they are, they'll be the team that potentially plays the Dodgers. If the playoffs were to start today, that would be the case. 59-50 ball club. Dan, who you got in this one? Please, no bias on this ranking right here.
No bias whatsoever. I'm born and raised in downtown Los Angeles. I grew up just a couple blocks away from Dodger Stadium. No bias, though. I got the Dodgers beating the Giants. Reason being, just a better overall team. Today, Matt Cain officially will undergo through a season-ending elbow surgery. Looks like he's got Tommy John surgery coming up. The Giants just got hurt at the wrong time. And I don't see him catching up. They just recently got swept in Frisco by the Dodgers. And the Dodgers are just going to run away. It seems like the Dodgers are a second-half team. After the All-Star break, they got well rested. Clayton Kershaw right now is just pitching lights out. Yesterday, pitches a 1-run game. His ERA is at about 1. Chris, you know more than anyone, the Dodgers are going to take it.
You were talking about Cy Young, Chris. Why is Clayton Kershaw not in your discussion?
Well, I was talking about Cy Young for the American League. National League wise, I think they might I think in 50 years, 100 years from now, you might see the Cy Young Award, or what was the Cy Young Award, maybe be called the Clayton Kershaw Award, right? This guy is pitching out of his mind right now. I mean, ever since that no-hitter against the Colorado Rockies, he's really just, I think it's confidence more than anything. He's always had this stuff, and, I mean, he's been the best pitcher in the league now for a couple of years. But, I mean, his stuff is just, he got no-hit stuff every time he takes the bump, and he held the Atlanta Braves to 1 run last night. A very good Atlanta team that knows how to hit the baseball around. So, definitely I like the Dodgers over the Giants right now. I think confidence-wise, I think the Dodgers are just soaring above San Francisco. Let's not forget, San Francisco had a 9.5 game lead at the beginning of June. Over the LA Dodgers, and Baseball Tonight, the show on ESPN, tweeted, "Sorry, LA, your season's over," and a picture of the broadcast, a picture of the standings on their broadcast. And now we're sitting here on August 1st, and the Dodgers have a 2-game lead over the San Francisco Giants. Granted, it's just a 2-game lead, and if the Dodgers lose 2 in a row and the Giants win 2 in a row, here we are back right where we started. But I think the Dodgers will hold on in the National League West, despite having the toughest schedule out of any other NL team here in the second half. I just think the Giants don't have the offense to get it done. They've tried new guys out. They signed Dan Uggla for a little bit. They let him go today. So they have really a lot of question marks on their offensive side. And I just think the Dodgers have the advantage pitching Kershaw and Greinke in games 1 and 2. And when it's in the ALDS, it's just a 5-game series. Best of 5. Winner's got to win 3. And I think if the Dodgers can nail down those first 2, they'll just cruise it to the NLCS for the second consecutive season. So really love the job that the Dodgers are doing here in the second half, despite the interesting loss to the Chicago Cubs tonight. Personally, as a Southern California guy, and I know Dan feels the same way, really looking forward to the Freeway Series next week. I mean, the Angels at 65-43, the Dodgers at 62-48. First 2 games, Monday, Tuesday next week at Chavez Ravine, Wednesday, Thursday at Angel Stadium. So it's going to be a fun series between the Angels and the Dodgers. Crowd's going to get into it like they always do. Players, probably not as much. There's not as much of a rivalry on the field as there is really for bragging rights in the stands. But gotta love what both the Southern California teams are doing, and the Dodgers are rolling right now. They've won 6 out of their last 7 games.
True.
Yeah, obviously. Or go ahead, Dan.
Just one last thing. I just wanted to bring up the point of momentum. Chris, you brought it up. As soon as Kershaw pitched that no-hitter, it was all just a surge of momentum for the Dodgers. They're playing great, although they did lose today. I took it more of a day off.
Baseball, you can't win them all.
Yeah, true. They took a day off. They didn't start everybody. They promised Dan Herron to pitch 5 innings only. They took him out in the 5th inning. So it was just a rest day today. So don't take too much from this loss tonight. And that's all.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very long season. Dodgers and the Giants here, obviously just limping into the postseason. Clayton Kershaw playing out of his mind. Brewers and the Nationals, the other if the playoffs started today scenario, as we have something around 55 games left here in the MLB, and we'll get a heck of a lot more information as this trade deadline progresses and we get past this. But, guys, a couple of teams that are just basically nipping on each other's heels. They're within 2 games of each other. Brewers and Nationals. We'll start with Chris. Who do you got?
I think I got to go with the Washington Nationals in this series. And the Brewers have really shocked me. I don't really see. I mean, they're very good offensively, and their offense has really carried them throughout the season. Francisco Rodriguez, K-Rod, that's had a revelation at the back end of their bullpen. But pitching-wise, I mean, outside of Yovani Gallardo and Kyle Loesch, and those aren't even big names to start with, I really don't know how well the Brewers match up against any team come postseason time, especially in a 5-game series. First of all, I don't even know if they're going to stick with winning their division. I think St. Louis, whenever they figure it out, and hopefully that's soon for the Cardinals, and maybe even the Pittsburgh Pirates, who are closer to first place than the St. Louis Cardinals, who the Brewers got a big win over tonight. I just think that the Brewers' starting rotation isn't all that great, and I don't know how well it's going to fare against a team like the Nationals, who have a lot of proven guys. Steven Strasburg, a hard throwing young right-hander. Jordan Zimmerman's a good pitcher for them as well. Doug Fister, who was a big part of the Tigers' rotation last year, a big piece for them in the rotation this year for the Nationals as well. You got Rafael Soriano, who's doing a pretty good job closing games for them. Drew Storen, Tyler Clippard, the All-Star this year. So I really like the Nationals team, despite them only being 9 games over 500 and somehow in first place. I think that just shows you how even Major League Baseball is this year and how fun it's going to be to watch how all this shuffles out over this last month and a half or so in the regular season. I still wouldn't discount Atlanta maybe coming in to get that spot, but they haven't looked good at all on this West Coast road trip. They got swept by the Dodgers, like Dan said, lost 10-1 tonight to the San Diego Padres. How many times do the San Diego Padres score more than 2 runs, especially at Petco? But I do like the Nationals in this series, and this is kind of like a boring series. I don't know if you can ever really call a playoff series a boring series, but I don't know if I'd even really bother watching this series unless it got to like a game 5 or something, because you got Bryce Harper and a couple of other guys. I mean, the Nationals got Asdrubal Cabrera, who's a great defender from the Cleveland Indians yesterday at the trade deadline, but I mean, Ryan Braun, some of these guys are fun to watch, I guess, but I mean, Bryce Harper, he's not even all that great. Let's face it. I mean, Bryce Harper, I think one of the most overrated prospects ever. I mean, he's still young. He can still figure it out. Maybe he's a late bloomer, but I mean, he doesn't have the pop that people thought he would. He was put in the same category as Trout when he was coming up, and he's nowhere near. And I don't think he'll ever be near where Mike Trout is right now. So I don't know. I'll take the Nationals in that series, but it could go either way. 2 teams that are playing well, but aren't playing all that well. And I think 2 teams that are going to get trounced by the Dodgers in the NLCS if either of them play. I think the Dodgers have a very easy path to the World Series. Obviously, it's easier said than done. It's not easy to get to the World Series. Just ask the LA Dodgers. They haven't been there since 1988. But, I mean, if there was ever a year for the LA Dodgers to be a favorite to get to the World Series, I'd have to think it's this year, unless they meet their nemesis St. Louis Cardinals, who seem to knock them out every single year.
Chris, you hit it right on the nail. It's a boring series, but I'll disagree with you with one thing. I'm actually picking the Brewers to win that. And I'm not just doing it to cause a stir and make this not boring. But I actually do have a few points. Reason being, the NL Central, where the Brewers play, has a tougher schedule, and so the Brewers are consistently seeing a tougher team. They got to play the Pirates, who are great. They're just 2.5 games back. They have to play the Cardinals, who just made those 2 trades for two starting pitchers. Lackey and who's the other guy, Chris?
Just Justin Masterson, Cleveland.
Oh, that's right. And they have to face the Reds. The Reds, they're always in the hunt in the NL Central. And see, in the East, the Nationals, all they have to do is worry about the Braves. Everyone just sucks in the NL.
You're being straight up. You're being straight up. I like it.
Yeah. And so I think just the harder schedule for the Brewers will prepare them for that playoff matchup against Washington if that were to happen.
Coming up next, guys, we're going to talk a little Ray Rice. Obviously, very interesting impact to not only the Baltimore Ravens but the National Football League in general. And we'll also take a look at the preseason week number 1, guys. We finally have some football. It's been a long a month of the calendar, but in 2 days we are going to see some NFL action. Stay tuned. You are listening to the National Sports on Spreaker.com. Who is the team to beat in the National Football League as we begin preseason action? NFL insider Robert Dieters is up next on National Sports. The story of the 2013 Major League season has been the resurgence of the Dodgers, led by Yasiel Puig. How realistic of a shot does Los Angeles have at making the World Series? Jason Gerline leads the roundup next on National Sports. Thank you all for joining us here on The Discussion, presented by Dan Godino, Chris Sylvester, and your host for tonight's show, Nick Rice. This presentation is presented by National Sports on Spreaker.com. Obviously, a lot of fallout being made in Baltimore, Maryland, where Ray Rice basically physically assaulted his own wife and slapped with basically a slap on the wrist, 2-game suspension. I mean, I'm not the only one that's been saying that.
Lick of a wrist.
I mean, a slap of the wrist may be a little harsh compared to what he was being punished with, and I don't even think that's a punishment. But nevertheless, I mean, guys, I think this sends a negative message to the league. I mean, basically, Roger Goodell's in a no-win situation with the rest of his suspensions for the next few months. I mean, it will all be compared to Ray Rice. And NFL, they definitely dropped the ball here because Goodell's argument was, hey, listen, we are doing a better job than the legal system, and that just opens up a brand-new can of worms, something that I don't think he needs to get himself into.
Let's play a little family feud here. Everyone say this with me. Go home, Roger Goodell, you're drunk. 2 games for Ray Rice. 2 games? Really? 2 games?
I mean,
for assaulting, knocking out somebody on camera? Okay, maybe it's one thing.
Was
It's
knocked out when he made that decision?
probably. I don't even know if that's why I just said, say it with me. Go home, Roger Goodell, you're drunk. I'm serious. I don't understand only 2 games for this. I'm thinking something more 5, 6. Isn't it something dumb? Like if you get caught, didn't Von Miller get busted for weed and have to miss like 6 games?
Yeah.
Really?
A good,
And it's legal. It's legal in Colorado. So okay. First, so you're Von Miller. You're doing something legal in Colorado. Mm-hmm. You test positive for it. You get suspended 6 games. You're Ray Rice. You beat your wife unconscious. You get caught. You drag her around in a casino. Get caught by TMZ on tape. Thank you for TMZ for the tape, for letting us know exactly what happened. I mean, yeah, it's one thing if there's a story that comes out or there's witnesses that say that, and he only gets 2 games. But for it to be on camera, I'm thinking something like 6 or 7 games, minimum.
Right.
Maybe half the season. I mean, that's some serious business right there. Didn't Dante Stallworth get suspended a year for committing manslaughter? That's his car. Like that's his car. Like he hit somebody with his car. That was probably on accident. He didn't mean to actually run over somebody and kill him. Right. This is Ray Rice physically beating a woman.
Right.
And he gets suspended 2 games at the beginning of the season. Mm-hmm. And I'm not looking at the schedule right now, but do you have any idea who the Ravens play those first 2 games? If it's
they play the Browns and the Steelers, and that game is in Pittsburgh.
Those are the first one's kind of a walk in the park game for me. I think the Ravens can definitely beat the Browns without Ray Rice, and I think there's a possibility.
I love what the Steelers
you like Pittsburgh.
I think they go. We've been doing team breakdowns. Me and Robert. I think they go 11-5 this year, based off of a lot of the stuff that's gone real under the radar. Their draft was amazing. Is
Mike Tomlin going to be contributing to that, tripping people on the sidelines? Is that? I think the only way that the Ravens lose to the Pittsburgh Steelers is if Tomlin helps out a little bit, tripping on the sideline.
In Seattle? They got another one there in Pittsburgh.
No, very true. But no, getting back to Ray Rice, I think it's stupid, man. It's a lot. The NFL's taken heat for years for little punishing too hard, and the whole thing with concussions and everything. I mean, there's so much drama in the National Football, so the National Football League. Sorry, we've been covering NBA, MLB, Association, Baseball League, whatever. NFL. There's been so much drama in the NFL, and I just feel like this adds to it, but in a negative way. 2 games?
Yeah.
You got to be kidding.
I mean, the one thing that really annoys me, and I'm sure Dan will be able to go more in depth on this as well, is that Roger Goodell, I mean, love the man, but sometimes I hate when he can't admit when he's wrong. And going through an interview with a number of reporters today, he mentioned how, we did better than what the legal system did. This punishment is far less severe than what anything he would have gotten if he wasn't an NFL player. And also, they touched on how they are harsh on physical assault in the past. And, I mean, it's completely contradictory. sometimes I just wish Goodell would be able to sit in front of an audience and say he's wrong and he will do it better next time. And that wasn't what we got, Dan. And unfortunately, Ray Rice got off the hook big time.
Roger Goodell is wrong. You're right, Nick. There is one thing that can save this from just looking worse than it already is, and that's if the Baltimore Ravens ownership and management step up and suspend them another few games. I don't know what the right amount is. How about they step up? How about the Ravens step up and say, you know what? On top of what the commissioner's doing, ourselves as an organization, from a PR standpoint, public relations standpoint, we're going to suspend you another 6.
Wow.
You know, that's what they should do. That'll level things out. You know, the NFL's a collective. It's a group of people. It's a group of owners. Okay, so the group of owners have got to decide. Hey, you know, let's do more. Let's do more about this. You know, we look bad. And so I think that's just one way of solving this stupidity from Roger Goodell, is helping him out. Help out your commissioner. Suspend him another, I don't know, what would you guys do? Another 6 to make it an even 8?
Well, I was just going to say suspend the same amount that the NFL did and go to 4, but then again, that still is far below what you should have gotten in the first place. I mean, I think right now, it's obviously a lose-lose, but doing something like that, trying to even the playing ground, would help.
Right. I'm looking at the schedule right now, and they would still actually be in the hunt.
Right.
But they got week 3 at Cleveland. So the first game,
the Cleveland game is week 3.
So the first game is at home with the Bengals. That goes up in the air. Without Ray Rice, they might lose that. Against the Steelers, that's also up in the air. They always play close. They're always going down to the end. So that one could be up in the air. Then they got the Browns, Panthers, Colts, Bucks, Falcons. So see, just by hearing that schedule, you instantly think, hey, we could lose Ray Rice for a couple of games like that and still be in it. I almost feel like Roger Goodell took the side of the Baltimore Ravens from a football standpoint,
right,
and said that this could affect the league in some way, somehow. I don't know. I just don't. I can't comprehend what he was thinking. We can't. We won't. Although he would justify it and say, "Hey, at least we did something." He's actually lying when he said that. The court system did do something. Ray Rice has to appear in counseling. He has to go to these meetings where he has to handle his anger management problems. So the court did do something for him to say, "Oh, they didn't do anything." Well, you're wrong. You're messing up some more. You're making yourself look worse. I'm done with Roger Goodell.
Gotta agree with you guys. Just to finish up on this Ray Rice point right here, did you guys at all catch what Stephen A. Smith had to say and heard that he was suspended from ESPN? You guys catch that?
Yeah, it's funny how...
What's your take on that? Because my take on that is like, I didn't really, and I hope I don't get suspended from national sports for this, but I didn't really. I mean, I guess I guess you have to, it's such a sensitive subject talking about this, but I didn't really. I watched the interview a couple of times, or whatever. Stephen A. Smith's comment, whatever you want to call it. I watched it a couple of times. I didn't really see or hear what he said that was so wrong. I mean,
hold on, wait. Can I explain that to you real quick?
No, you can explain it to me. Like, I get it. Like, he was basically saying, like, women don't provoke, having a man beat you. Yeah. But I get it. I get why he was suspended. I get their reason behind that. I understand. He put himself out on a ledge and probably took it too far. You could kind of tell when he was talking, he tried to kind of take it back. While he was talking, but I mean that didn't work. And then Michelle Beadle, the Sports Nation lady, she took it too far. She took it. I think it was just. I think Stephen A. Smith's only suspended for like a week, right?
Yeah,
a week or something like that.
He's one of my more favorite.
Oh,
guys.
I love Stephen A. I love Stephen A. Good guy. I've actually met him before. I met Stephen A. before.
During sensitive times, you have to be ultra sensitive.
Right.
Sort of like, 9/11. You don't say the word terrorist in the airport, right after that happens. So right after that decision from Roger Goodell, you have to be a little bit sensitive. Everyone's disagreeing. So if you start leaning towards, I'm not saying Stephen A. Smith is agreeing with Roger Goodell, but if you start leaning just a little bit towards that, dude, that's going to blow up in your face, and that's exactly what happened. And of course, the media takes things way overblown. They just exaggerate things, and hey, we're a part of it. We like to exaggerate a lot of times, But that's part of the game, and that's what happened. He wasn't sensitive. He had to be just a little bit more sensitive. He should have chosen his better words, just the way he said it, maybe. But that's what happened. It just got overblown, I think.
I agree. Too overblown. I guess. I mean, I think ESPN suspended him just because they didn't want any They didn't want the. You know how we're kind of giving some heat to Roger Goodell in the NFL right now for making it too light of a suspension for Ray Rice. I think ESPN felt like they had to. Maybe they didn't agree with it. Maybe they didn't feel like they. I mean, if they weren't, ESPN would have gotten criticized if they wouldn't have suspended Stephen A. Smith. So I don't think it was all that big of a deal. I hope I don't get suspended for. I don't think it was all that big of a deal what he said, but I do agree with you guys that it is a sensitive subject and you have to be extra sensitive, especially when it is the topic of discussion like it is right now. But Miss Beadle. She went a little ballistic with it. Yeah, chill. Michelle Beadle, if you're listening, there's a great chance you're not listening. But my girl, it's just
busy looking at other people's tweets.
Yeah, she's probably busy on Twitter trying to come up with something new to stir up the sports world. But boy, that was an interesting little back and forth, and I'm sure next time Stephen A. sees Michelle in Bristol, Connecticut, things might get a little bit awkward.
Yeah. Well, obviously, I think the only people that were punished from the Stephen A. suspension were the fans of the First Take.
Yeah.
I mean, I definitely got punished. Definitely.
There's nobody that's going to replace Stephen A. in like a positive manner. Like, there's nobody on ESPN or maybe even in this world. Oh, okay. Who?
Frank Caliendo. He does a perfect impersonation of
He's
Stephen
great.
A.
That guy's great.
Just throw him in there.
The guy that does the Saturday Night Live. Have you seen those about Stephen Smith?
Oh yeah.
Those
yeah.
Stephen
I
A.
don't know
Smith.
his name, but yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, he does a great job too with the hairline all the way back. Stephen A. Smith. Stephen A. Smith is like. I feel like Stephen A. Smith would be a great cartoon character. I think he'd be a fun, kind of just like a fun one to look at as a cartoon character. And National Sports shouldn't suspend me for asking to see Stephen A. Smith as a cartoon character.
Yeah, well, he's been criticized before by a hairline that recedes LeBron James, but that's another story for another day.
Presented by Bosley, this hour of National Sports.
You guys are ridiculous. We're going to move on to the preseason week number 1 as Stephen A. Smith will be in just in time to recap all the week 1 games as some of the key matchups here, just real quick storylines. Buffalo and New York, nothing there, but that's the Hall of Fame game going on coming into the next. Yeah, did Eli already throw a pick? Coming in the other games, did I stir up anything there? The Jets and the Colts coming up on Thursday. That will be the next slate of games along with the Niners and the Ravens. First game, we'll see Ray Rice on the field for that one.
Super Bowl rematch.
Seattle at Denver. That'll be very interesting. The Cowboys and the Chargers. That wraps up the Thursday night notables. Coming up on Friday, you got the Eagles and the Bears. Love to see what Philadelphia has without a Deshaun Jackson. That'll be fun to watch. On Saturday, Houston at Arizona. Jadeveon Clowney takes the field along with the Green Bay Packers at the Tennessee Titans. And just real quick from the preseason, obviously not a whole lot to make out of games that don't even count. But what do you want to see week number 1? Johnny Football.
I was just about to say that. He took the words right out of my mouth, Dan. Johnny Football, yeah. The Browns, for whatever reason, I will be interested to watch the Cleveland Browns preseason game. I don't think in my wildest dreams I'd ever thought I'd say that, but I'm very excited to see, I'm sure everybody else, mainstream answer here, I want to see what Johnny Manziel can do against an NFL defense. Now, how many reps is he going to get exactly? That's the big question mark. It's the first week of NFL preseason. You're probably going to see the starters get what? Five snaps, one drive, couple of downs here and there. So you're not going to see the starters go out there all too much. So a lot of us mainstream football watchers, Americans, whatever you want to call us, are just going to flip off the TV after about 5 minutes into the game. But those first 5 minutes are what we're all anticipating with this preseason week 1 coming up right here. But, Nick, we talked about this a little bit earlier today in the car. Bills and Giants, the Hall of Fame game. Why is it that every single year the Hall of Fame game has the most boring matchups? Like, do I care about a Bills? If the Bills and Giants, Bills are in the AFC, right? Yeah. If the Bills and Giants ever met up in the Super Bowl, I probably wouldn't watch. Yeah. I'd go to the party, enjoy the food, socialize with the family, the friends, and not watch the game. Every year I watch the game, but if it came down to the Bills and Giants, I don't know if it will during my lifetime, just because, that's just so weird to see the Bills even in the playoffs. Yeah. But the Bills and Giants, Hall of Fame game, at least. I mean, look at the other matchups you have. You have the Ravens and the Giants, the Cowboys, the Chargers, the Broncos, the Seahawks. You couldn't have made one of those the Hall of Fame game. I don't know about that.
That game right there is dedicated to all the kids like me who grew up in the 90s.
Yeah.
Buffalo Bills,
I'll tell you this,
Bills.
Dan, I don't know if you agree. The best Super Bowl of all time, that was the 1990 game.
Buffalo against the Cowboys?
Against the Giants. I don't know if you remember that, the wide right game.
That's right.
Yeah.
So that's what that game's about. And I don't know if you guys saw today, but Jim Kelly got inducted to the Hall of Fame, and he's
good for him.
He's actually recovering from cancer, and so they did a huge ovation for him. He actually led the Buffalo Bills in the 90s to 4 straight Super Bowl appearances, 4 straight AFC titles. Never got the Super Bowl, never got the ring, but it was good to see, and it's just a feel-good story. That's what that game's about, most likely, just a dedication to him and that 90s teams.
Obviously, they made the preseason schedule a long time ago, so they couldn't predict that. But now that I think about it, a must-watch is the pregame to see Jim Kelly, to see the Hall of Famers, of course. That all comes up on this coming Sunday, guys. We're ready for more football, but after about 2 minutes, I'll be ready for the regular season. And there's still another month and a half to go before that. But also, we're about ready to wrap things up here. Only a couple of minutes remaining on the discussion. One last topic, Marshawn Lynch. He ends the holdout. He did so about a couple of days ago, reporting to Seahawks camp. Apparently, they're working on something where he gets another $1.5 million over the next 2 years in signing bonuses. He has absolutely no penalties, I believe. It's reported 0 as far as penalties for missing 8 days of training camp. We'll start with Chris. 30 seconds here. Marshawn Lynch, is he the difference to a Seahawks second straight Super Bowl run?
I'll make this 10 seconds long. I know me and Mr. Godino and I always talk about Marshawn Lynch, and we talked about this holdout last week, and this guy knows Marshawn Lynch doesn't even practice. I'm just going to hand it off to Dan Godino like he is Marshawn Lynch right here to talk about Marshawn Lynch.
Here we go.
Well, I'm going to handle it like Marshawn Lynch does. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's all right. He's the reason they're in the Super Bowl. He's great. I disagree with the holdout. I think he should have still attended practice and still gone through his agent with some negotiating. It was mishandled, but I'm sure the 12th man up there in Seattle will forgive him.
I mean, obviously, he would be the very first guy. But I also want to ask one more question here. He's not, in my estimations, a top 3 running back. There's still, I could mention 5 names that are better than Lynch. Right off the bat, you got to go McCoy at number 1. Adrian Peterson is in the mix. I don't understand why Jamal Charles has gotten so little recognition.
Did you see his ankle-breaking moves today? Did you guys catch that? Jamal Charles had some crazy move on some defender of the Granted, it's a Kansas City Chiefs defender, still a defender good enough to make it into the NFL.
Right. What are you saying with Kansas City?
You're gonna see
One
this
and
year.
done again? Yikes.
Yeah, we don't. Poor Kansas City. That's a tough blow to end their season last year.
Jeez, Andy Reid, love him, but yeah, not the best situation. But obviously,
Maybe he could take a page out of Rex Ryan's book, Diet Wise. Okay, that's it. I'm done.
so are we on the discussion. But that's not all for us. Coming up this week on LA Broadcast Camp, we're going to be in UCLA for a couple of days there for one of the better play-by-play camps around. Make sure to tune in during the week. We'll get you a couple sections of the discussion.
There's, of course, the discussion. NS Sports is our big weekly series that we have for national sports. That's going to be big time as well. But August 22nd, y'all, tune in. St. John Bosco, St. Louis.
Yes.
It is the high school football opener. Stretch Internet. Follow us at SJB Broadcast on Twitter. Jason Aldean to take you out. Nick Rice, Dan Gadino, thank you very much, fellas. We'll see you soon on The Discussion.